All right. Hello, everyone. This is Andy, one of the hosts of the IU Cinema podcast. I am on the phone with Richard Roberts, the organizer of Slapsticon, which will be coming to the IU Cinema June 27th through 30th, a 4-day festival of nothing but silent-era slapstick. Richard, thank you for joining us.
Oh, hey, happy to be here. Let me start off immediately by correcting you. It's
Okay.
also it's not just silent, but it's also quite a bit of early sound stuff too.
Oh, excellent. Okay, that was another question I had later on, so we'll talk about that more a bit later.
And you left the M out of my name, but that's okay. That's
Richard M. Roberts. Okay.
Then there's only about 4 Richard M. Robertses. There's
excellent.
Of Richard Robertses.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about this event.
Sure.
People. This is the first year it's in Bloomington, but this has been going on for a while. So why should people show up to this event?
Well, I'm sorry. How many? What? I missed that. This is going wonderfully already.
Oh, it's okay. Just give me an idea of what people are going to expect.
Are going to expect.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, Slapsticon has been going since 2003. We were in the we came out of the Rosslyn Spectrum Theater in Arlington, Virginia, near Washington D.C., and it basically we started the festival because there was a group of us who are sort of oddly known as the Silent Comedy Mafia. It's a group of film historians, archivists, collectors, who just decided that a lot of this stuff wasn't being shown at some of the other regular cinephile conventions and silent film festivals. And because it was funny, at some of these other festivals, this group of collectors would end up just meeting in hotel rooms and start running the films in there that we had or brought, saying, hey, there's some Ben Turpin being shown up in room 307. Come on up.
Sounds sinister a little bit.
Yeah, but certainly covert.
Sure.
And finally, Rob Farr, who we consider the founding father of Slapsticon, because he works for Arlington County, realized, hey, we had a nice theater here we could do this in, and like I said, we did the first one in 2003, and it very quickly turned into an international event. We had major archives like the Library of Congress, the UCLA Film and Television Archive, the Eastman House, Museum of Modern Art, all getting involved. I think everybody discovered this stuff is a lot of fun to watch, and the history hasn't been covered anywhere near as much as it should be. A lot of that has changed since we started Slapsticon. A lot of research projects, books, DVDs have come out of the event just from people coming in one place, meeting and talking about the stuff and seeing it, and just networking in general. And like I said, we were there until in Arlington until 2010, and then we had some issues there with the county. Then we decided to start looking for a new venue, and IU's Indiana Cinema, University Cinema, ended up just being a terrific place to put it on.
Well, excellent.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your background, Richard.
Well, like I said, I'm one of the godfathers, quote unquote, of the silent comedy mafia, and I've been a film historian and collecting and researching films for over 50 years at this point, and supply a decent number of Slapsticons. I'm now become sort of the ringmaster programmer. I've been the one stuck with running it for the last 8 or 9 years. And like I said, a lot of the stuff comes out of my collection and other collectors, and like I said, the archives that we mentioned. And it's a lot of, I would say it's the hardest work I do all year, but at the same time, it's just very gratifying, because these films don't get seen enough, but more importantly, when we do this, they get seen as they are supposed to be seen with an audience.
Yeah.
And it's just wonderful to hear the laughs that we get off of the material. It's great to see it, still out there doing its job. I mean, a lot of times when I do a lot of these kind of shows. I tour all over the world running this stuff and talking about it. But usually when I look at an audience, the first thing I say to them is, I say, you realize you're an endangered species. I mean, it is almost impossible, in this world of iPods and home video and everybody, looking at this stuff on little tiny flat screens, with their headsets on, to get a group of people together to share laughter, basically. And it's a great feeling. It's my reward because I certainly don't get paid for doing it.
Oh, sure. We're very familiar with that in the podcasting world too.
Yeah.
So just on the off chance that somebody's listening to this and is like, what does that word slapstick mean?
Slapstick. Yes.
Give me a sense of that.
Well, I guess the textbook definition would be a definition of a type of comedy involving some sort of physical violence. I mean, slapstick. There was literally a slapstick that commedia dell'arte, vaudevillians, circus clowns, etc., would use to hit each other. And it's funny because I'll admit something I don't often admit, but Slapsticon, as a title for the event, has always kind of bugged me because really what we're running runs the gamut of comedy styles. You're going, when people think slapstick, it's going to be just people hitting each other with custard pies and, Three Stooges and that kind of thing. Not at all. Visual comedy, like I said, ran the gamut from, polite, subtle, social comedy, type of thing you might see on a good sitcom, and to crazed, insane, violence taken to all sorts of bizarre extremes. And the other incredible thing, especially about the silent material, and another thing that I frequently remind the audiences of is these are the days before CGI. Certainly, there were plenty of most of the major films special effects were invented in the first 20 years of cinema. But the incredible thing is you're seeing people basically risking their lives an awful lot of the time to get laughs.
Oh, absolutely.
You're seeing people hanging off buildings, driving cars into other cars or buildings, falling off of all sorts of things, and just doing all sorts of incredible physical stunts that you don't see many comedians today doing.
Absolutely. Well, even something like was it A Night in Casablanca that has the mirror gag?
No, Duck Soup.
Duck Soup has the mirror gag, but even that is like, I can't imagine somebody doing that live now. They would have it faked somehow.
When was the last time the mirror? We once a group of us tried to figure out how far back the mirror routine goes, and we figured there were probably two cavemen. And it's still, Lucille Ball did it on I Love Lucy. I am sure that it is still being done somewhere.
Yeah.
As much as I avoid a lot of modern day filmmaking and comedy, it's been done endlessly. It really is one of the classic, simple gags. Just and it's still done. I know in theater studies, it's an acting exercise.
Sure.
Just having two people copying what each other are doing.
Yeah.
So, a lot of comedy is extremely old, and everything's been done and redone under the sun. But like I said, what you don't see these days are people standing on a street corner while a half-ton side of a building falls on them with them just going through the window.
Yeah, exactly.
That you don't see.
Yeah, definitely. So talk to me about programming the event. Do you have any sort of guidelines for yourself about how to program it? Like if you showed something last year, you don't want to show it this year, or are you always on the lookout for new and obscure stuff to show? What are your guidelines?
Basically two criteria: rare and funny. We do sort of pride ourselves on showing things that you're not going to see. You're not going to be able to rent from Netflix or find on a DVD. We like to showcase the comedians who aren't as well known. It's getting sadly to the point where even Chaplin Keaton and Harold Lloyd aren't that well known.
Sure.
But the other part or the other interesting aspect of the comedy film industry, which it really was, it was an industry in and unto itself. Really one generation of performers and writers who all start in like vaudeville and circuses around the turn of the century, get into motion pictures, and you find these same people creating comedy even into the 50s and 60s in television. But there were literally hundreds of comedians working. I mean, even starring comedians making short comedies, features, films of all shapes and sizes that people just don't know that much about anymore. And so what we try to do is showcase the best, or if not the best, even the more interesting ones. It's like all these films, there's a reason we're showing them. Mm-hmm. And like I said, after 4 days of laughing at this stuff, it really is kind of exhilarating and exhausting at the same time. But we do show films by the big names, but they tend to be ones, lesser known ones. I mean, it was like Buster Keaton's career went on for 60 years, and a lot of historians wouldn't even look at anything that he made in the talkie era. Yeah. And he did. I mean, he was working till the day he died. He did incredible work in television, and a lot of the sounds. Some historians really have blinders, and it's almost like, if they don't have complete control of what they're doing, it's not worth seeing. It's like, no, a lot of the times it's interesting to see how a major comic artist is working in less than perfect circumstances. Yeah, and again, there's still plenty of laughs there to be mined. I mean, the last Slapsticon we did in 2010, we actually unearthed and premiered a Charlie Chaplin film that nobody even knew existed. I mean, either as a Chaplin film or in a print. We unveiled his fourth film appearance in a Keystone short called The Thief Catcher, which basically set everybody out rewriting all of Chaplin's filmographies after that. Yeah. The other joke used to be, if we're running Chaplin on the bill, it's going to be Sid Chaplin, Charlie's brother, who also was a comedian. But no, we do run. I said we're going to be doing on Thursday evening, on the first night of the show, we're going to be doing a Marx Brothers Rarities presentation, which will have work by the Marx Brothers that a lot of people have not seen, since it was broadcast on television, or odd little promotional films or things that they did. It's just all sorts of new Marx Brother footage that we're going to be showing.
Yeah. So it sounds like everything is going to be on film. Is this, I'm guessing, is it 16 or is any of it 35?
Oh, we got a little bit of everything. We 16, 35. There'll be a couple of digital presentations of stuff that's the only way that it can be run at the moment. Yeah. But basically, we end up actually installing extra projectors into the IU Cinema to run the show. Like I said, it's kind of an interesting and new experience, I think, for some of the IU Cinema staff too. Yeah. It's like even a regular film festival might run 15 or 20 feature films in a 4-day period. We run over 100 films. Wow. And some of them in very rare, one-of-a-kind collector prints that may be 80 or 90 years old. Sure. So it's like I said, it's the most work I do all year. Part of it's just getting all of this conglomeration of film in one place at one time. Sure. So you said that a lot of this comes from your own personal collection, but where does the rest of it come? How do you convince a collector who, this is like the only copy of this in existence, to kind of hand it over for this event? Well, oddly enough, most collectors are just happy that somebody wants to see it in the first place. And like I said, I've been doing this for a long time. I do consulting work with the archives. In fact, while I'm talking to you, I'm here in Washington, D.C., getting ready to go down to the Library of Congress Packard campus for their Mostly Lost Symposium, where a bunch of collectors and historians get together to identify films that the archives have no idea what they are. Mm. And I've been doing that for various archives for decades. And so it really is it's a case partially of networking and just collectors know that we'll treat their films well, and they're just, like I said, a lot of them come to the event. That's actually one of the other fun things about Slapsticon is a lot of the time we don't know what we're showing even while the event's going on, because collectors will come up and go, "Hey, you want to run this?" "Yes, we do." "How interesting." So the program literally, we do announce, most of the films that we're showing, but at the same time, there will be some surprises, and I do keep the schedule a little loose so that we have room to run those surprises. We also tend on Sunday. Our last program is scheduled at 3:30 on Sunday. Called Ones for the Road, but after Ones for the Road, there tend to be a number of interesting encores. Okay. And I can already guarantee that is going to happen. We tend to run. Don't anybody plan to leave early on Sunday evening. Sometimes the real, most surprising films end up being the last ones that show up on the bill.
So people actually come to the event with films that they want to show, and kind of grab your ear and say, "Hey, by the way, I brought this with me."
They do indeed.
That almost sounds like it turns into like a competition of like, "Oh, no, I've got the real film that's obscure."
Not at all.
No?
It turns into hey, we didn't even realize sometimes the collectors just find these things at the last minute and go, "Hey, let's let's run this." And sometimes going through my own stacks, I find things I don't realize I have.
Well, I hear stories like that from archivists all the time where they're like, "Oh, yeah, sure. And I turned this over, and then it turned out to be something I'd never seen before."
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I love stories like that.
So part of the fun for, like I said, the Slapsticon is, the Slapsticon audience is partially, we have serious historians coming from all over the world. We have people come from Europe. We had Asia, just some amazing places to see these things. Part of the audience, about half the audience is made up of archivists and collectors, and the other half are just people who want to laugh. And so we really do keep an eye to, let's face it, there are a lot of obscure films that are obscure for good reason. Mm-hmm. But we make sure that, all of these comedies are worth seeing, even though we do sometimes, we do it on Thursday afternoon, the program slot we call Weiss-A-Roni, which is made up of films from the most obscure comedy company of all time, Weiss Brothers Art Class, who actually managed to have a number of major comedians work for them, but sometimes their pictures are jaw-droppingly cheap and strange.
Well, that's good too sometimes.
Yeah, it is. And sometimes we're running films, again, in that slot, we're not going to guarantee that everything is good. Everything is unforgettable.
So let me ask you, you're talking a lot about the historical value of these films. Are you going to have any sort of organized events to talk about the history or the context of these films?
A little bit. The other great thing that we always have at Slapsticon is a huge program book written by, with notes, very extensive notes written by myself and other members of the silent comedy mafia. And that gives people a lot of information they're looking for. We also have people introduce the films and give some information along there. But we really, like I said, even though we have a large number of historians and academics there, we try to keep it as entertainment is definitely the eye here. Give enough information, and then if people are interested, truly interested in learning more, they can pretty much most likely turn to somebody they're sitting next to and find out way more. We also another thing that I've always been a stickler about in programming the show is to make sure that the social aspect of this conference is certainly paid attention to. We always make sure we have plenty, long lunch and dinner breaks, plenty of time for networking and socializing to go on. And like I said, that has probably been the most fruitful aspect of Slapsticon, in that it has brought people together who have then gone off and done DVD projects and restoration projects. the Silent Comedy Mafia, in fact, will be selling quite a number of new books that have just come out, including myself. I just finished a 500-some page volume on obscure Hal Roach comedies that we'll be selling here at the Fest. So, like I said, in that respect, Slapsticon has been very successful in getting the word out and getting these films seen way beyond the scope of just the festival itself.
Yeah. So let me ask you one more question before we get to the films.
Sure.
What drew you to the IU Cinema?
Well, for starters, we had several offers of different places to move the festival, but when we went out to talk with John Vickers and get a look at the cinema and the campus, it's gorgeous. It's wonderful. It's a beautiful theater. I also I think the location is perfect for a lot of. It's funny. A lot of the academics and collectors who are really interested in this stuff tend to live in the Midwest. And even when we were doing the show in Arlington, Washington D.C., we had a lot of the collectors and academics and archivists delighted because they could come out and do research at Library of Congress, go to Slapsticon, do some other stuff. But I don't know. We built up a very loyal audience, and every year we did it in the D.C. area, our audience grew. And we certainly got plenty of publicity. But I get the feeling we're actually going to pull a lot more film buffs into Bloomington than we were out here in D.C.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think John has done a great job of building an audience for silent film in Bloomington, and they're going to go nuts over this.
Oh yeah, I mean, the reputation of the Indiana University Cinemas was very well known to me way before we, considered bringing the event there.
Yeah.
And I think John and his staff have a great attitude, and it's a great theater, and I think it's going to work very well.
Excellent. All right. So let's talk about these films.
Sure.
I'm already excited because as I look at the schedule, I see you're scheduling essentially wall to wall from 9 a.m. in the morning all the way to the evening.
We do indeed.
That is exciting for me.
And there are people who come in there at 9 a.m. and do not leave the theater until we kick them out at night. I don't recommend people doing this, but there are people who do.
Yes. So let's real briefly give an overview of the different days. You talked a little bit about Thursday here. There's some Marx Brothers stuff and some strange stuff early on in the day. Late at night, there's a couple films, Father's Close Shave and Bringing Up Father. Are these related to each other at all?
They are indeed. They're both based on the George McManus comic strip, Jiggs and Maggie, Bringing Up Father. Wonderful, both wonderful comedies. The first one is a silent version of the strip that features a very strange-looking comedian named Johnny Ray playing Jiggs, and then the Bringing Up Father, the second, features from 1946 when Monogram actually did a series of Jiggs and Maggie films, and they star Joe Ewell Sr., who's actually Mickey Rooney's father.
Okay.
Because Mickey Rooney is Joe Ewell Jr. That's his real name. And Bringing Up Father, the Monogram series has been out of circulation since the 1950s, really probably been out of circulation since about 10 years after they were released due to rights issues on the films. But we were able to secure a print of the first one, which is I think going to be one of the delightful surprises of the festival, because it's a wonderful film. It's written and directed by an old comedy film industry veteran named Eddie Klein, who started as a Senate director, worked with Buster Keaton in the 1920s, directed most of the major comedians, W.C. Fields, Wheeler and Woolsey. I'm trying to, of course, not being able to pull names I need, but he was one of the major directors, and he basically sort of wrapped up his film career doing this Jiggs and Maggie series in the 40s, although then he worked for Spike Jonze for another decade in the 50s as a comedy consultant. And it's just got a wonderful cast of old comedians, names that probably won't be familiar to most of the audience, but to all the academics, certainly people like Tim Ryan, Tom Kennedy, Jimmy Aubrey. Basically, the whole film is just peppered with great comic character actors getting all these nice little comedy bits. And the other fun thing is the artist himself, George McManus, appears in both films.
Okay, interesting.
So the comic strip fans definitely would know the name of George McManus, and that just seeing him actually working in the films is exciting as well.
Yeah. So it looks like on day 2 here on Friday, it's going to be a lot of shorter films. I'm also excited to see sort of a Buster Keaton film from the 60s. Until you said, I know he had done that Twilight Zone episode sort of late in his career. I didn't realize he was still doing other stuff at that point.
Buster Keaton worked practically up till the day he died. And in fact, this film is his last released film. It wasn't the last thing he made. He did a couple of other film appearances after this. But it was released in this country as War Italian Style. It was an Italian film. He's actually working with the most popular comedy team in Italy at the time, Franco and Ciccio, who are sort of an acquired taste to American audiences. but this film kind of gets a bad rap with some of the historians who've written about Keaton, basically, frankly, because I don't think they've seen it. For starters, Franco and Ciccio were quite honored to be working with Keaton, and the film is very reverential to him. And he's co-starring with them in it, playing a Nazi general. which is very interesting, but it's very obvious that he gets to create most of the comedy that he does in the film. And the ending of it is actually because it was the last film that the American audiences certainly saw of Buster's, is a wonderful kind of warm tribute to him. It's worth it just for the last 5 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
But again, it's a film. It's funny because 30 years ago, Buster Keaton's silent films were almost impossible to see. They were tied up in ownership by a person who made it very difficult to get access to them. Now you can buy all of Buster Keaton's silent work on DVD for less than $200.
Sure.
It's all of the other 35 years of work that he did that's hard or impossible to see. So that's why we tend to showcase a lot of later Keaton work.
Yeah.
And frankly, again, we've sort of busted a lot of myths about the quality of that work over the years at Slapsticon.
Very good.
Yeah.
So let's move on to Saturday here. I'm seeing a lot more feature films. How do you strike the balance between features and shorts in a schedule like this?
Just basically by doing programs of features and shorts. We tend to, because again, it's 4 days, and I do sort of worry about some of the people who go in there at 9 a.m. and stay till 1 a.m. We always try to program the more challenging things early on. Actually, one of my favorite slots is the first program on Friday morning of the early comedies, and this is where we show a lot of films basically from 1900, 1910s, a lot of comedians that nobody know much about now, but some of these are very interesting, and oddly enough, some of them are very dark. We always tend to showcase two comedians in this program, Ham and Bud. Were a comedy team of Lloyd Hamilton and Bud Duncan. We're also showing a number of later Lloyd Hamilton films he did after the teaming. But the Ham and Bud films, basically Ham and Bud was the most psychotic comedy team of all time. Almost completely unlikable characters. These two would go out of their way to sell each other to mad scientists for medical experiments. A film we ran several years ago called Ham and the Sausage Factory had Ham and Bud out collecting dogs for the local butcher to turn into sausage. So there's whole contingent within Slapsticon that just love these guys. That there's also a contingent that are completely horrified by them. But we tend to love running them. And our one this year is Ham Among the Redskins. So in the program, we already have the political apology to the Native Americans.
Sure.
Political correctness. We do have a blanket political correctness apology that we always tell people. We say, understand that these are films from a different era, and there are things that may offend a few sensibilities out there from time to time.
Definitely.
But Ham Among the Redskins is a lot of fun. The other comedian, equally dark, is Musty Suffer, who was a comedian named Harry Watson Jr., who was a big vaudeville and circus star. And he did the series The Mishaps of Musty Suffer, that, again, can be quite odd. There was one film we ran a few years ago where he goes to have some plastic surgery done at a mad doctor's place that was basically more like an iron foundry than a operating room. And they were like cutting off body parts and stretching body parts and doing all these horrendous, horrible things to him.
Wow.
And it's funny. The comedy, certainly became visual comedy, even into the 1920s in the silent era, becomes much more refined, much more subtle. But it's really fascinating to see this much more comic strip sort of humor that prevailed in the teens. You see certainly the Max Sennett Keystone comedies that are very surreal and bizarre, but Max Sennett's only the tip of the iceberg. There are people that make Max Sennett comedies look very normal by comparison. So that's what we see in that slot, and that's always a very fun. But at the same time, there's also some wonderful polite social comedies. Another Slapsticon favorites is the husband and wife comedy team of Mr. and Mrs. Sidney Drew, who basically you can almost credit with creating the whole polite situation comedy form. It's kind of, like you see a direct corollary from Mr. and Mrs. Sidney Drew to things like the Dick Van Dyke Show and sitcoms of the 60s, but very funny and very clever. And they were extremely popular. They made literally hundreds of comedies in the teens. Sadly, Sidney Drew passed away in 1919, and they became pretty much forgotten after that, but we always try to run at least one of their films as well.
Sure.
But that's what, like I said, that's a great slot, that early comedy show. For the academics and for just people who want to come and be surprised. See, I guess we can move on to the afternoon.
Yeah. So it looks like it's a lot of features. It looks like. Well,
the short comedies actually morning and afternoon. We tend to run the features in the evening.
Oh, okay.
We're unveiling a restoration from Library of Congress Friday evening of Attaboy with Monty Banks, who was another very popular comedian in the 1920s, not very well known today, but he made quite a number of features that are gradually being restored and recovered. And this will be the first time this restoration's been shown. Banks, again, was another one who, if anybody remembers him at all, he did one of the most incredible train chase scenes, which was the ending of a feature he did called Play Safe that is highlighted in any number of comedy film compilations. And there's a very, very fine comedian who did in the 30s moved to England and became a very successful director and married Gracie Fields, who was like the icon, British comedy icon of the 30s and 40s. So, but we like running some of his stuff. And then I guess we moved to Saturday.
Yeah.
That was so weird. Saturday evening we're showcasing another feature from the Library of Congress. This is a restoration of a British film by a British comic named Walter Ford. Again, a very interesting and funny comedy called Would You Believe It? Walter Ford's practically unknown over here, but I think that one will be a major surprise to a lot of people. It's the only silent film I've ever seen that spoofs a Fritz Lang silent feature called Spies.
Okay.
And it's like very interesting. Well, so we're also going to be. We do have a couple, of guests. We're actually showcasing a collection from a British collector named David Wyatt, who we're bringing over with a number of his prints, and he's going to be doing a show of all sorts of interesting things out of his collection on Saturday afternoon. And then we have Rob Stone, who's a curator at the Library of Congress, who's going to present on Friday afternoon. Again, another bunch of interesting things he's found in the Library of Congress vaults. I'm not even sure what they're both running, but I do know there's going to be some very interesting goodies and surprises there.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So let's move on to Sunday here.
All right.
This last day, and my internet connection's slow, but I'll get there. So you talk.
Sunday we tend to relax a little bit because we understand that people have been doing this for 3 days, and some people are sleep deprived. So a little lighter fare. We run some fun talky comedies in the morning. We're going to run a film directed by Roscoe Arbuckle. Fatty Arbuckle, after his scandal, after he was banned from appearing on the screen in 1922, he worked for the next decade as a comedy director.
Wow!
And we've been showing, actually a very talented comedy director. He really the films are quite good, and we've shown quite a number of them over the years. We're going to be showcasing another completely forgotten comedian on Sunday afternoon, Glenn Tryon, who was Hal Roach's attempt to replace Harold Lloyd after Harold Lloyd went off to do independent production. And actually, the film we're going to show, The Battling Orioles, was a Harold Lloyd picture that Hal Roach had on the boards that he replaced Lloyd with Glenn Tryon. And it's fascinating to watch when you realize that, because it has a very Harold Lloyd feel to it. Glenn Tryon was, again, another fine comedian and actor. Most people know him recently from a film called Lonesome, which was restored by the Eastman House a number of years ago, came out on DVD. A really fine dramatic performance in a late silent directed by Paul Feos. But this is Tryon's first released comedy feature, and again, very seldomly seen, and quite enjoyable. I think it'll be a real surprise. And then, like I said, we run a few, our Ones for the Road, our final, in theory, send-off for the festival. We always run some just really, really top comedies by some comedians that everybody knows. We're running a wonderful Lupino Lane short called Who's Afraid? Lupino Lane was basically maybe second only to Buster Keaton in terms of talent as a comedy acrobat, and just an amazing fellow who was also Ida Lupino's uncle, another part of the very famous Lupino theatrical family. And we're also going to show a Stan Laurel solo comedy, pre-Oliver Hardy. Both Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy had long film careers before they ever teamed. And we're showing one of his solo Short Kilts, and then we'll end with an Our Gang comedy called High Society. But as I said, the Ones for the Road never end up being truly the Ones for the Road. There will be some interesting goodies shown in Encore after that. So
now, will you announce those like on Saturday when you know what's coming, or are people just going to be in for the ride?
They tend to be in for the ride.
Okay.
Once in a while, we might say, hang out for this, but the element of surprise really is something everybody seems to enjoy.
Yeah.
And as I said, a lot of people, we've really worked very hard to program the festival, both for the hardcore people and for the people who just want to come and see several programs and, dip their toe in the water and see what it's like.
Yeah.
But we also find a lot of people who just come to see a couple end up staying for several days sometimes. So.
Well, that's excellent. So let's wrap this up. Slapsticon is June 27th through the 30th. You can buy a 4-day pass for I think it's $100 for
$99.
$99 for a 4-day pass.
Uh-huh.
And that info's on the cinema website. You can also buy single-day passes. I don't know how much are those. Are those?
I believe $30.
$30 a piece for a single day. So if you look at the schedule and you're like, I got to see that one, but I'm not free any other days, you can just go ahead and get the single-day pass. And this is a thing where you can literally have the pass and you show up and you don't have to leave if you don't want to.
You don't have to leave, or you can leave whenever you feel like it. We don't stop you at the door, but we welcome you in, and we'd love to see you all there. So,
well, Richard, I got to say, I was very interested in this event. Now, after talking to you, it's my most anticipated event of the summer. I cannot wait.
We're going to see you there, then.
I will be there. I will probably be there at 9 a.m. on pretty much every day. I don't know if I'll be there literally all day every day, but maybe I'll be in and out. Maybe I'll play it that way.
Well, come on up and say hello. We look forward to seeing you, and we love talking with everybody. We really just try to make it a friendly, fun event, and it has managed to be that after 10 years. So.
Excellent. So, Richard Roberts, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you guys at Slapsticon June 27th through 30th.
Absolutely.
A Place for Film is recorded at WFIU Studios in Bloomington, Indiana.